The sample arrived frozen. It had been extracted from permafrost in northeastern Siberia, from a layer of sediment roughly 48,500 years old, formed before our species had left Africa, before the Neanderthals had disappeared, before anything resembling modern civilization existed. The researchers at the lab in Aix-Marseille were not expecting it to do anything. They thought it carefully. They introduced it to living cells. And then it started to replicate. Something sealed in ice since the last ice age looked at a living host, recognized it, and began to spread. The scientists named it Pandoravirus Yedoma. It is the oldest virus ever revived, and it is not the only one. In 2022 and 2023, a team led by virologist Jean-Michel Claverie at Aix-Marseille University published results documenting the revival of 13 ancient viruses from Siberian permafrost samples. The samples had been collected from multiple locations across the Siberian north, some from riverbanks, some from the bottom of frozen lakes, some from soil layers tens of thousands of years old. Each virus had been dormant, suspended in frozen sediment, with no metabolic activity, no replication, no sign of life. The team extracted the viral material, introduced it to modern amoeba cells in controlled lab conditions, and waited. In every case, the viruses became infectious. In every case, they replicated. The oldest, Pandoravirus Yedoma, had been sealed in the permafrost for 48,500 years. It still worked. To understand why this matters, you have to understand what permafrost actually is. Permafrost is ground that remains at or below 0 degrees Celsius for at least 2 consecutive years. In practice, the permafrost that underlies Siberia, Alaska, and large parts of northern Canada has been frozen continuously for thousands to millions of years. It covers approximately 25% of the northern hemisphere's land surface. It is not just frozen dirt, it is a vast natural archive, an unbroken cold storage system that has preserved biological material, organic matter, gases, and organisms with extraordinary fidelity. Woolly mammoths have been pulled from Siberian permafrost so intact that their flesh, fur, and stomach contents were preserved. Seeds sealed in permafrost for 30,000 years have been germinated in laboratories. Ancient bacteria have been cultured from ice cores dating back millions of years. The permafrost has been keeping things alive, or something very close to alive, for longer than most people can meaningfully imagine. The question the Claverie team was asking was a specific one, not whether dormant viruses could survive in permafrost, which had been theorized before, but whether they could survive in a state capable of causing new infection. Whether 48,000 years of deep freeze was enough to kill a virus completely, or just pause it. The answer came back clearly. 48,000 years is not enough. The viruses they recovered were not just intact genetic material, they were functional. When placed in contact with a living host, they recognized and entered the cells. They hijacked the cellular machinery. They produced copies of themselves. The core process of viral infection, the process that drives every pandemic in human history, was still operational after nearly half a century of millennia in ice. If this is the kind of story that makes you want to know what comes next, you're in exactly the right place. Subscribe to Midnight Fact Society. We cover stories like this every week, and drop a comment below with any unsolved mystery or impossible fact you want us to dig into. Every idea is genuinely welcome. The 13 viruses Claverie's team revived are all classified as giant viruses, a category of unusually large viruses that infect amoebae, not humans or other mammals. This distinction matters because it made the research possible to conduct safely. Giant viruses that target amoebae pose no known threat to human health, which meant the team could revive and study them under standard laboratory conditions rather than biosafety level 4 containment. But the question the research raises is not specifically about giant viruses. It is about what else the permafrost contains. Giant viruses were chosen because they are large enough to be detected and isolated. They were the safest possible test case for proving the concept. The deep frozen ancient viruses can be revived in a functional, infectious state. The same principle applies to everything else preserved in the same sediment. Other virus families, ancient bacteria, organisms that have not encountered a living immune system in tens of thousands of years, which means no organism alive today has any evolved defense against them. This is not theoretical. In 2016, an outbreak of anthrax in the Yamal Peninsula of Siberia killed a 12-year-old boy and sickened dozens of others, along with more than 2,000 reindeer. The source was a thawed carcass, a reindeer that had died of anthrax and been preserved in the permafrost for 75 years. An unusually warm summer thawed the ground enough to expose it. The spores were still viable. They spread into the soil and water. This was not an ancient pathogen from before recorded history. This was 75 years of permafrost storage, and it was enough. Scientists studying the incident noted that anthrax burial grounds across the Siberian north, sites where infected animals died in large numbers during historical outbreaks, are now in regions of accelerating permafrost thaw. The archives are opening. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the global average. That is not a projected rate. That is the rate observed over the past 40 years. The Batagaika crater in eastern Siberia, a massive permafrost collapse scar known locally as the gateway to the underworld, is expanding by 10 to 15 meters per year as the surrounding ground thaws. Across the Arctic, permafrost that has been stable for thousands of years is becoming unstable within decades. The carbon released from thawing permafrost is already measurable in atmospheric readings. The biological material released is harder to quantify, but no less real. Every meter of permafrost that thaws is a meter of frozen archive that has never been surveyed. We do not know what is in most of it. We have not sampled most of it. What we know is that the material that has been sampled, a tiny fraction of the total, contains organisms capable of surviving tens of thousands of years of freezing and becoming infectious again within days of thawing. Jean-Michel Claverie has stated publicly that he believes the revival of ancient pathogens from melting permafrost represents an underappreciated public health risk, one that is growing as the Arctic warms. The viruses his team studied are not the dangerous ones. They were chosen precisely because they are safe. The dangerous question is what the same techniques would find if applied to the wider permafrost, to the bacterial communities, to the viral dark matter that makes up the vast majority of preserved biological material in ancient sediment. The ice kept those things frozen for longer than our species has existed. It is keeping them frozen for less time every year. The Siberian permafrost does not distinguish between what is safe to release and what is not. It simply thaws. 48,500 years is a long time for something to wait. Whether you find that fact unsettling or merely fascinating depends, perhaps, on how carefully you have been paying attention to the weather. Thank you for watching Midnight Fact Society, where curiosity meets the unexplained. New videos every week. Subscribe and we'll see you at the next one.